Vanity of Sleep is kind of my philosophy nerd song. The song is a critique of modern life, of the failures of modern life, and uses a lot of modern 19th and 20th century philosophers to discuss it. It's a discussion about consumer despair, and uses Marx's stages of alienation actually to critique it. I think one thing we often forget about in our very partisan society is there are sometimes adequate critiques from people we may not agree with. Say Karl Marx. I think his description of some of the failures of capitalism is valuable, while I might not necessarily agree with his prescriptions. And I think there's some real value in understanding that thought. YouTube comment people. You can gain valuable critiques without necessarily always agreeing with someone's prescriptions of what needs to be done. There's a difference there, though they are connected too. And so I talk about, the song opens up pretty much saying exactly what it is. I say, this is a love affair with consumer despair, an emptiness I can call my own, an arbitrary sanctuary where we deposit prayers to a dispensable God. This song was really inspired by actually a lot of pieces of art and modern pieces of film and television that critique modern society. One is Mr. Robot. Another would be probably my favorite movie and a great book, Fight Club, and things that basically examine the way that we live our life. There's these philosophers, Theodor Adorno and Max Horkheimer. They talk about how our value in modern society basically becomes dictated by what we own, and how basically the things that we own begin to own us. That we oftentimes lack a deeper sense of identity, so our identity becomes what we can have and what we can own. And if you don't believe that, just literally listen to any rap or pop song on the radio, because the entire premise is I own these things, and even sexuality is spoken about in a sort of a commodity sense. And these are the things I own, therefore I am better than you, and you should listen to me. I have value because of what I am, and what I am is what I own. Basically, God becomes a reflection of our society, and that's a Feuerbach idea, that our concept of God is essentially a reflection of the society that we built and of what we value. This song is basically me trying to look at, what is the most materialistic parts of the world as I knew it, and a lot of that was actually influenced by conservative Christianity. That the idea is that, God wants you to have a lot, that America is this exceptional nation that is the center of God's heart and of God's interest. And so this song was kind of a process of discovery of how do I understand the spirituality of Jesus, this poor, this almost revolutionary figure from the desert who had nothing and said, I came not to be served, but to serve, in this kind of spiritual revolutionary. How do I fit that next to crystal cathedrals and churches with organs of gold, and realizing that the God that we understand now is kind of this fictitious entity that we've created in the image of wealth and of American exceptionalism. Another huge backdrop to this song is Emil Durkheim. Durkheim had this very fascinating concept that if you want to understand a society, you look at suicide. You look at people whose mental illness it can be so pronounced that suicide becomes the only option. And that's how you understand a society, is through that person. This song also is dealing in a lot of ways with that concept, with materialistic despair, with the despondency of having too much, being more or less kind of a prophetic statement about our society. This song gets into kind of the archetypes and how we've traded the idea of a garden, or the idea of being satisfied with what we have, for a tower, or the need to have more and to be conquerors. It was really a fun one to just talk about excess and despair. And how in the modern world we can have so much, but seemingly be emptier than we've ever been. I think this song probably makes a lot of sense in light of a Donald Trump presidency, someone who has crafted his identity around having the most and speaking very openly about being the most successful and the strongest and the biggest and the richest, and how these are the people that we choose to lead us, the people that worship the God of material. And ultimately, as you see in any real spiritual tradition, material things will fail us, that these things will all burn, and that if your identity is based on what you have in your materials, then there's a good chance that it won't be able to survive crisis, both economic or personal, because these things ultimately can't save ourselves from ourselves. That is Vanity of Sleep. I encourage you to check out the poem that it's based off of, which is The Second Coming by Yeats, and it's a fun one. I hope you enjoy it.